When online instruction is mentioned, a lot of parents are very hesitant. But did you know that it can be done in a way that students not only learn, but gain confidence and even thrive as students? Parents that were once hesitant are thrilled and even begin promoting it to other parents. So, what changes their mind about online instruction and gets them to recommend it? That's what today's show is all about. If you have school aged children, you're going to want to watch or listen to today's podcast. And without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the latest episode of Learning with Success, the show for parents of school-aged children, sponsored by Success Tutoring Online, helping students with academic advancement for over 20 years. And I'm your host, Armando Salcido. Today we have as our guest, Ms. Kyla, who happens to also be the online administrator for Success Tutoring Online. Hey, Kyla.
Hi, Armando.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Okay. Today I wanted to discuss the whole concept of online instruction and screen time for kids. Since we do our online tutoring, when we talk to parents about doing online, a lot of times they're skittish and they're very apprehensive, and they feel a little basically kind of like, oh, I don't know if I should do this.
Honestly, it's a valid concern. There's been lots of studies done on the damage that continuous screen time and no interaction can do to students.
Right.
Our world is built for interaction, and learning is a lot of times done through interaction.
And that's why I always try to explain what is done with our online tutoring and how it's different. So let me show you a clip, and then let's actually talk about that, because I think if parents see this, they'll see what I'm talking about. Hold on just a minute here. Okay, so here I have a clip of one of our tutors working with a very young student, teaching him some of the basics of reading.
So now we're going to do the A sound, but it's not a Y anymore. It's a I, like in the word rain. Okay? All right. So here we go. It says, look at each picture and write its long A name. Okay? So now we know that all of these words are spelled with an AI. So now we have to sound out the rest of it. So what's this a picture of?
Chain.
Chain. So how do you spell the ch sound? Can you spell the word chain for me right here? Okay, now that says cane. What makes it say ch? Exactly. Well done. All right. Now, the arrow is pointing at what?
Yeah.
All right. Good job.
On the video, what I did is as you obviously can see, that I blurred out the student's face, so we couldn't see the student's face, but I also blurred out when the student writes, because whenever anybody writes on the actual whiteboard, shows their name. So I had to blur that out also. So I had a number of little blurrings that had to go on here. So, but you have an instructor working one-to-one with a student.
Yeah, that's the first thing that's unique. That's the first thing that's very different. It is time that is completely dedicated to that child's learning.
Exactly.
There's no one else asking questions or interrupting or re-steering the focus somewhere else. So number one, you get a lot more done. Number two, the kid feels very heard.
Right.
that's part of it. A lot of times they feel like they can't get their questions answered, or the thing that they're not quite getting is not the same thing that other people are not quite getting.
Right.
So it's very unique in that sense that we're working specifically on what is causing them with an issue, right?
What's also good is that the tutor and the student can see each other and can talk. The student can feel free to just say, "Okay, but I don't understand this part." So it's there's a lot of individualized one-to-one attention by the teacher to
Right.
the student.
Right. And if you notice the instructor in that video, she was moving specifically at the pace that that child needed as well.
Right.
And also, if you look at the material that she's using, it was selected specifically for that student. Some
Exactly.
students need lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of practice. Some students need a faster pace. Everyone's a little different. So we're going to adjust what we're doing specifically to that student. Clearly, she knew how to work with that child in a way that child understood. So you could tell that kid knew chain. And when there was something to change, he missed the H. She was able to take that time and that attention to make sure he really had it before they moved on.
Exactly. So he really gets the actual concept there. The AI sound, okay, I understand now that what sound that makes. So there's enough practice so that the student can actually really get the concept.
Because of the platform the way it is, that it's very interactive, and that child is able to back and forth with that instructor, and they're able to really, both of them, be on that page like it's sitting on a table right in front of them. It makes a big difference for how that child is learning, and they're there working it out. She's asking him to problem solve with her. When he missed something, she went, "What makes the CH sound?" And she asked him to problem solve.
To
So that-
think.
To
Right.
think, to look, what is it? And he was able to figure it out. And that brings up their confidence. That brings up their ability. You know, it's sort of a much better approach than just sort of marching them along.
What's really good though is the actual engagement by the student. They're actually engaged, working on the material, the lesson, they're learning, they're actually working at it, and they have their attention focused on that and
Right.
actually trying to learn.
That kid was right there, was focused, was learning, was interested, had someone to interact with, was being fully guided.
I tell parents all the time, imagine if you had a teacher to work with your son or daughter on an individual basis, one-to-one, with no other students, no other classes, no anything else, just focused only on your son or daughter, and the child feeling comfortable asking questions, being able to talk, engaging, and feeling like he is being heard. I go over this all the time with parents and say, now, so imagine that situation. Do you think your child would learn faster? Do you think your child would learn more? Do you think your child would actually enjoy school? Those are all the advantages, when it's done that way, if it's done correctly. So the platform itself is good. However, on top of that, we're very selective about the actual instructors we use. Okay,
Exactly.
So it's not just the platform itself, but then you have to have instructors that know what they're doing and are seasoned instructors that know how to work with kids, know how to communicate, know how to relay concepts and information so that students get it.
That's, for us, that's an important point. The other thing too, Armando, is I recently was doing interviews with our tutors, and quite a few of them were saying the same thing. They're problem solving to figure out long-term success for this student.
Yeah.
And that is a very unique approach.
Right.
They want to know, what do I do to really help this kid?
I want to show another clip of a slightly older student working on, I believe this time is math. Hold on just a minute. Let me pull that up.
What do they want me to do on 25 and on this one?
Solve the equation. They want you to get to a point where you're like, m equals this or that.
How do they want me to do? Oh,
Well, m plus 8 times
5,
m
right?
minus 2 equals 0. So what are the rules about 0? If something times something equal to 0, what do you
And
know?
one of the m's are zeros.
But we don't know which one, right? So it
Yeah.
could be either. So if it was the first part,
Oh, so then we go m equals -8 or +2. Thank you.
So there's one sample of an algebra problem, and the student was kind of like, what do I do here? How do I handle this? And you didn't just give her the answer. You give her some direction, but then she had to come up with it. She had to think about it and then figure it out.
yeah, and part of the reason why I do that with her in particular is, again, going back to thinking of each student as their own unique situation, helping her and reminding her to lean back on those rules. She's going to take that with her, and it's going to help her in the next thing and the next thing. That's a lesson beyond just the fact itself.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's a lesson in how to study. Find those rules that are going to apply to everything.
Yeah.
And that's something that I work with her continuously on, because that's something that that particular student has an issue with her learning. So being able to think with, what does she need? Okay, with her, I'm going to redirect her back to the rules quite often and
Right.
redirect her to the rules.
So I have one more clip that I want to show you. It's a little bit longer, and this is an example of an instructor not only showing a student how to do a problem, but explaining an entire concept. This is a student that wanted to just do these problems and then said, wait a minute, what is this? What are they even asking here? So
What am I even doing?
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So, okay, hold on just a minute here.
Okay, good. So let's just take a look then one at a time. So number 1, identify the simplified scale factor of figure S to T.
The simplified scale factor. What's that?
Okay, here's an example of scale. Like when they make, have you ever seen, they're probably in movies you've seen it, or in museums or whatever, they'll have a model of a building, let's say. Like before they built the Empire State Building, they built a model.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they built that model, they call it to scale, meaning everything compared to everything else was just like the real thing, but it was way smaller. They do that all the time. Like they'll build a model of an entire shopping complex before they actually build the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so they can see how things relate to one another or whatever. They can compare, there's all sorts of reasons that they do it, right? But that's called scale. What's the scale? So if we were going to build, let's say we did a model of a house, right? And this was the model, this was the small one. And then, but the real house was going to be like much bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say this house on the bottom here was 10 feet, but this house was 50 feet. Well, the scale in that case would be, if this were house A and this were house B, the scale factor, the ratio of one to the other would be 10 to 50.
Oh.
Right? Now, usually, like over here, they're doing it as a ratio. You could also do it as a fraction. But now, if you simplified this, well, you can divide both of these by 10, right? So your simplified version then would be 1 to 5, meaning this house is 5 times as big as this. That's a scale factor, comparing one to the other. And they do it in the form of a ratio. They could write it as a fraction, but in this case, they usually use a ratio like this with a colon, right? So if you look at this, really all you have to do is choose a side. So I would choose either this side compared to this side, or this side compared to this side. It really doesn't matter which one you choose, right? The bottom one's pretty easy. So if we took the bottom one, we would go, okay, well, S to T. So make sure that you do it in the order that they're saying. So you want to do S to T, which means S is 2, T is 8. So you've got a scale factor of 2 to 8, but they want it simplified. So what would 2 to 8 be if you simplified it?
1, 4.
1 to 4. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Exactly. So there's an entire concept there. Now, obviously, they probably went over it in the classroom, but the student didn't get it.
Or it
Yeah.
was in the textbook too, like in the classroom, in the textbook, here it is in the homework,
Right.
right? It doesn't necessarily matter how many times you present it to them if you're not clearing up that concept. And if you notice what the instructor did there, she built a bridge from the student has no idea what's happening, and gradually, bit by bit, explain the concept to her to bring her back to doing the problem correctly.
Right.
And that's the beauty of that, having the seasoned, experienced instructor there. She knew exactly what to do when the kid was, what is that? Right? The kid clearly did not know what's happening.
Right.
So she takes it from the concept, draws the picture, gives her some visual guides to think with it, shows her how the concept works, gives her an example, brings her back to the problem, applies the concept to the problem, and the kid went, oh, you could hear it in her voice. She went, oh,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. The other thing is that the instructors that we have would never say, well, you should have learned that before. Oh my God.
Exactly. The approach is very
Never.
different. And another thing too is that question asking and curiosity should be encouraged.
Exactly.
So,
Right.
so if a student doesn't know what something is, they're letting you know this is a question. They're letting you know this is a moment for learning.
So there's basically three parts. First of all, there is the actual platform itself that has to allow for interaction, live communication and interaction. Second of all, if you notice, they all have material that is actually placed up on the board specifically for that student. And you have qualified instructors that know what they're doing, know how to communicate, and know how to instruct students so that they actually understand it, they get it, and they actually enjoy the learning process.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that's number 2. But number 3 is the actual material used. Some places use a cookie cutter approach. Everybody does the same worksheets. Everybody does the same program. Everybody does the same curriculum. So what we do is we start off with an assessment to find out what is it that student knows and doesn't know. What are the areas that we actually need to work on? So every single program, every single lesson is tailor-made specifically for that student.
I would add a number 4, first of all, to what you're saying of what makes it, very like another element or ingredient in why it's very successful is that we work very closely with the student and very closely with the parents as well.
Right.
And that's something that is very, very different, is that we really want to know, we want their feedback. We want to talk to them. We want to know what's happening with the student and how they're reacting and if they're doing better and what's going on with them and how do we have to adjust. So how is progress? An assessment is very different than a test.
Right.
When we first meet with a student or a family, it's a lot of it is interview and discussion of what has been going on recently with this student.
Now, another thing that's true. We definitely get all that information and actually to work with a student. But here's the thing: if a student does not feel comfortable or safe to communicate, they're not going to say these things. You
You're
say.
right.
So
You're right.
it's not just asking these questions. It's got to be somebody that actually really likes working with kids.
Yeah.
Somebody who actually really likes and wants to communicate and wants to get the information and wants to help the kids. And it comes across. Kids get that. They understand that. And then they're willing to open up and maybe just a little bit. And then as you talk more and more, and then it's like, oh, they're actually listening to me.
Yeah.
They're acknowledging. Huh. And then they laughed at my joke. Okay.
Yeah.
and then they start to open up more. And then they will feel more free to communicate, to say, oh, well, I never understood this. If it's been covered in class, and they still don't get it, they
Yeah.
might be afraid to say, I don't understand this.
You're exactly right, honestly. Failing in something is a major point of vulnerability for anybody.
Right.
They're feeling very vulnerable,
Right.
having to confront an area that they know they're not doing well in, or that they dislike, or that they've always struggled in. And it's difficult to feel like someone is not going to, make fun of you, push you around, or, somehow it's going to be bad because you're dealing with this area that you're feeling very vulnerable about.
Right.
That's difficult for them. And the younger they are, the harder that is.
I'll tell you, parents very much appreciate that. We've just recently got a whole new slew of testimonials and success stories from parents on Google. If somebody wants to, they can go on to Success Tutoring Online, look at reviews, and you can see all these different reviews from parents that, now they actually really understand things. Now they get things. Now their grades are going up. Now we've had students that are getting into the actual college of their actual choice. Okay. Getting into the high school that they wanted. Or here's a student that did not even like to read at all. And now they can read, and not only like, but they enjoy it. Let me actually show one other clip of one of the tutors that we saw here just a little while ago from the interview that you did with her.
Have you been in education?
Well, that's an interesting question. I went to college to be a teacher. I student taught a lot in the public schools. I taught when I was in my 20s, probably through my mid 20s. And then in some just strange turn of events, I ended up in the corporate world. I actually started in a corporation running their training. So I was still in education. I was running their training department. And then just kind of by hook and by crook and just what was needed and where things went, I ended up in management. I was in management for about 25 years, kind of wishing the whole 25 years that I was still teaching. One day, just circumstances were such that I had an opportunity to do that. And so I did. And I got back into teaching, taught in a classroom for a few years. I loved it, but I felt like I could do more and affect more positive change if I kind of went out on my own. And so I did.
And so what subjects do you tutor?
So I do a lot of young reading, teaching reading. I do reading of all. Reading is just totally my wheelhouse. I love to teach little guys to read. So I'll do, 4 or 5-year-olds, teach them phonics, teach them reading, teach them writing, things like that. I also love to get the older kids who hate reading, which sounds kind of weird, but I do. I love that because to me, to make a reader out of someone who's never even read a book is an amazing thing. It's just an amazing thing. You can't survive well in this world if you can't read and write. I get parents sometimes saying, I can't get her to get her nose out of a book. Like, what did you do? Right? So I love that. I do love math. I do math up to about 8th grade. And to see that light go on when they start to understand what's happening and when it starts to all make sense and the pieces all start to fit, it's the best. It's the best, right? So I love that.
And that's why we have her as a tutor.
Exactly. So,
It
and
matters to her. It matters to her how well they do,
exactly.
Yeah.
And each of the instructors that you actually interviewed, I've got clips of them. I'm not going to show them all, but they all have the same viewpoint. It's all about getting the student to understand,
Yeah.
not just pass a class, not just get a better grade on a test, not just basically do okay, but actually understand, appreciate the fact that they now know this, feel more confident, can use the material, and know that they actually have basically more of a future, really. I know that you interviewed a number of our instructors and they all have the same idea. And even those that are at higher levels, we've got instructors that actually cover 3rd year calculus and physics, all the way down to, again, several instructors that work with younger kids, beginning reading,
Mhm.
phonics, beginning math,
Yeah.
from basically counting and learning the basics of learning to add, where you do the game of, okay, what's one more, you know
Yeah.
what's okay, we have 8, what's one more, and it's a whole game. And that's the thing, is it's actually making it fun, because again, I tell students and I tell parents all the time, learning, if it's done right, is fun. Kids all the time, it's like, look, mom, look, I can actually do this, I can do this,
Right.
it's fun when you learn anything. Again, it's fun. As an adult, you learn how to do something, so you want to show all your friends, check this out, look at this. Okay, well, I think we can actually go on and on and on about all the different things,
Yeah.
and on with online learning, if it's done correctly. Again, as you said, there are a lot of ways that it can be done incorrectly. We have seen that, and those are the concerns that parents have.
Another thing I think that is, a wonderful benefit to doing it with online is that it's much farther reaching, and it also helps the parent with their scheduling. So it allows, number one, going online allows our tutors to reach out and give that help to, the entire United States. We're able to reach students. We have students in Florida and Georgia and Texas and Utah and Nashville, Tennessee, and all over California and Washington and Oregon. We've got students that are all over the U.S. So we're able to reach out and reach further and help more students. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that parents and their scheduling. A lot of times driving in LA, come on. I lived there for 20 years, Armando. You still live there. It is holy moly sometimes getting through that traffic. So it saves gas, it saves time, and especially if they have many children, that is a difficult task being a parent.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness, trying to take them here and there and activities and soccer and this and that and after school programs and all the parents are all doing that. So everyone's out on the road with their kids. It's difficult for them to get that help. And so all you got to do is get them to that computer and we've got them and we're able to help
Exactly.
them. And
Exactly.
also, as far as topics go, you're exactly right. Everything from very beginning learning, which we saw an example of, to, I've taught cursive and handwriting on this platform, which feels impossible, but it is true. We have, I think we even have one of the clip. I don't know if we have it here, but we have a clip of one of the parents talking about how her son learned handwriting and cursive through
Right.
the online platform that we have.
Right.
All the way up to exactly what you said, through history and AP classes, through physics and advanced mathematics, calculus, right? All the way through biology and everything in between. So
All the academics.
all the common academics. Yeah.
All right. Well, look, I think this is actually really good. We've covered quite a bit and really trying to explain what it is that we do, how it's different, and really acknowledge the fact that we understand why parents have concern initially
I do.
when,
I do understand that concern.
yeah, in
Yeah.
regard to doing online instruction. But once they see it, once they actually experience it themselves, because when we first start off, we actually have the parents, usually we invite them to come on while we do the orientation with the student to let them know how it all works. And one for one, they always say, okay, this is not what I thought. This is great. This is good. I can
Yeah.
see how this could work,
If anybody wants a demonstration of how like a live demonstration of how our platform works, they're welcome to ask, and we will absolutely set up a demonstration time for them. No problem.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
good. All right. Well, I guess we're going to be ending off here. Thank you very much for joining us. I guess we will talk to you later, Kyla.
Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
So I want to thank all of our listeners and all of those watching on YouTube for joining us today. And we hope that you have found the information valuable and informative. And if you have not yet subscribed, please do so that you will not miss future interviews. Thank you very much. Bye. As mentioned at the beginning of the show, Learning with Success is sponsored by Success Tutoring Online. Our administrative offices are located in Burbank, California, but we provide tutoring or academic advancement to students throughout the United States.